the GDI, which is the Taliban CIA, is supposed to be going after ISIS, and they're the ones getting, like, supposedly the majority of the ISIS dollars to hunt ISIS. The biggest issue with GDI right now is they're holding 2 Americans hostage. For everyone who just heard that, yes, you're being lied to. The American in custody, Ryan Corbett, is locked in a cell with another American. It's never been made public. The Taliban are actually holding 3 Americans. So ISKP started as about 70% of it was formed from the Afghan Taliban and the Pakistani Taliban. About 15 to 20% of it now is kind of these Central Asian Tajiks. But the interesting part is people don't understand that that's still a small percentage of ISKP. They see 4 Tajik guys in the Moscow attacks and they're like, oh no, it's a Tajik organization now. And the Taliban and Al-Qaeda are worried, especially about Russia, and they're like, Russia's could bring problems for us. So now they're even spinning it, and they're even putting propaganda out. ISKP is a Tajik organization. It's a Central Asian organization. It's not an Afghan. It's like, no, guys, it's run by an Afghan. Sanullah Ghaffari grew up in damn Kabul, right? But they are trying to play that. And the interesting part is, So ISKP does not think people understand how much they have in Pakistan, and most of their stuff's based in Pakistan because it's very hush-hush, right? So Sanullah Ghaffari left Konar, where he'd been, and he moved down to Panjshir just days ago because he doesn't think the Russians know ISIS senior leadership is based in Panjshir, and so he moved there for his safety. The interesting part is the Pakistanis have yet to take a strike on ISIS-KP anywhere in Pakistani territory. The only government or military that has tried to strike ISIS in Pakistan is Iran, of all things. So earlier this year, ISIS did
Iran tried to strike ISIS?
Yes. So earlier this year, Iran did the big suicide bombing at member Soleimani's 4-year memorial ceremony, and like 90 people were killed. Well, Iran was smart and knew ISIS had moved to Panjshir. So Iran did a strike into Panjshir trying to hit ISIS, and they missed them. And they hit another compound. So then they publicly said, oh, we are going after Jaish al-Adl. It's just the old Jandala. So they said, oh, because they didn't want to admit they missed ISIS. But yeah, Iran shot in and tried to hit ISIS senior leadership. But yeah, so anyway, there's only been 1 strike on the ISIS safe haven since it was started in 2022 in Baluchistan. So they do feel safe there, and they have been safe there.
It's weird how this is all kind of tying in. Is anybody from the Taliban going after ISIS?
Yeah. On paper, the GDI, which is the Taliban CIA, is supposed to be going after ISIS, and they're the ones getting, like, supposedly the majority of the ISIS dollars to hunt ISIS. So the Taliban only goes after ISIS if ISIS is impacting them in some way. So if ISIS is going to do an attack on them. So the really interesting part is, I told you, ISKP has some sort of affinity to the Haqqani side of the Taliban. The Taliban's broken into 2 sides, okay? 2 kind of warring factions. There's the Haqqani side, and then there's what we call the Kandahari Taliban side, okay?
Okay.
So obviously Siraj Haqqani is this one, right? That's clear. And then the Kandahari Taliban side is basically the head of the Taliban, Hibatullah, and then it's basically Mullah Omar's son, Yaqub, and then it's Mullah Barater, okay? So these 2 sides are constantly warring. So the interesting part is ISKP is mostly attacking the Kandahari Taliban side. I think there's only been maybe 1 attack that you could maybe call, and it's only because it was near the building that Siraj worked in, but I still don't know if that was really any attack on Haqqani. So anyway, that's who they're going after. So just you have to understand this nuance that they're not even attacking all parts of the Taliban. The other thing is the Taliban are keeping ISIS in play and not going against ISIS for any of their external plotting or training, etc., because they need ISIS to stay a threat. They need ISIS to have some successful attacks because they need to keep the U.S. ISIS dollars going in. So as long as you keep ISIS as a threat, you'll keep getting paid to go after them. The biggest issue with GDI right now is they're holding 2 Americans hostage. For everyone who just heard that, yes, you're being lied to. The American in custody, Ryan Corbett, is locked in a cell with another American. It's never been made public. The Taliban are actually holding 3 Americans. Last week, the press finally realized it's 2, but they don't even know. So the Taliban's holding 3 Americans. 2 are locked in a cell together, okay? One, the family, the State Department for so long said, don't say it publicly. We're going to negotiate. We're going to get them out. And they didn't. And the family finally said, hey, we're going to make it public. The Taliban has, our family member. So we are paying them weekly to go after ISIS, and they basically have 2 Americans locked in their basement. And the worst part is there's kind of like this deteriorating health situation. So it used to be the 2 of them and a Brit. The Brit got out, and he almost died of sepsis, but he basically said, hey, when I was in, the only reason I stayed alive is the 2 Americans in there were like helping me keep me alive, because they're not getting kind of like much food or adequate nutrition. And if you're not feeling your body well, you have organs that break down. It affects the brain. So yeah, we also have 2 Americans who are basically like suffering like severe health consequences in GDI.
Who are they?
Ryan Corbett is one of them. And then the other one hasn't been made public. The other 2 Americans haven't been made public yet because the State Department's doing something. But then the interesting part is, so that's the biggest problem. We should not be giving a penny to the organization holding Americans in their basement. The other piece is that a lot of people don't know is, so how GDI is structured, they have like different departments focused on different things. So they have one department, it's kind of like translates to the immigrants department, and that department solely funds and supports the Pakistani Taliban. So the tricky Taliban Pakistan I told you about, they're the ones doing all the attacks right now in Pakistan. GDI has a unit that just supports them. And the really interesting thing that a lot of people don't understand is the Taliban has gotten really smart, okay? So if you worked in Afghanistan everyone says everything's ISI in Pakistan, right? And then when you work in Pakistan, every attack is, it's the Indians or the Afghans, right? And so the Afghan Taliban is like, why not use that to our advantage? So what they're doing is they're rotating Taliban units into the TTP in Pakistan and being involved in the attacks, right? So they're doing all these attacks. They did like 800 attacks in the last year in Pakistan. They've completely resurged into one of the biggest terrorist groups in the region. Now, think about it. When the Taliban, the Pakistani military comes and kills 8 guys and say, well, 2 are Afghan Taliban, everyone's like, yeah, you're crazy. You're just calling them Afghan because you're Pakistanis, and you always did that when they weren't Afghan. So yeah, they're basically doing these attacks right now in Pakistan, part of their Fatah war plan, and nobody actually knows that that's the Afghan Taliban doing it. So that's one department of the GDI, and that affects Pakistan. But TTP has attacked us. TTP did the Marriott bombing that killed Americans, and TTP did the Peshawar consulate. So it's an American group we focus on. Now, the 12th department of the GDI is the most interesting. So the 12th department's job, their only job, is to protect Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. So they have branches over the whole country and all their intelligence shops, and their jobs are very simple. Okay, they protect the 30 Al-Qaeda training camps. They do all the vetting. So any new recruit, it could be Afghan, it could be Jordanian, Syrian, Egyptian. They do the vetting for the new recruits before they start training camp. They do all the movements. So they move all the new trainees in, they move them around, they move all the senior leadership of the Al-Qaeda around, and then what they do is when they move Al-Qaeda senior leadership around, they put them in their own houses, right? Because they know we got a relationship with the U.S. government. They're not going to strike us, so they're actually harboring them inside their own houses. And then they're basically in control of, they're helping protect Al-Qaeda's money, like their cash holdings in Afghanistan, which they have very large cash holdings, as I told you, even just the small mine piece. And then they're doing all the border movements for Al-Qaeda. So there is one unit in the GDI, their sole job is supporting Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.